Hurrem Sultan was a woman who rewrote the rules of power. With her radiant beauty, sharp wit, and love of poetry, she ascended from the chains of slavery to become one of the most powerful figures in Ottoman history. Capturing the heart of Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent, she became not only his favoured concubine, but also his legal wife and empress, something no woman had done before. And to protect her sons and their future, she did not hesitate to outmaneuver her enemies, even if it meant bloodshed. Her name at birth was likely Anastasia or Alexandra Lisovska. She was born sometime between 1502 and 1506, the daughter of an Orthodox priest in Ruthenia, a region then part of the Polish kingdom, now in modern Ukraine. For years, she lived a quiet life in her village until it was shattered by a brutal raid. Crimean Tatar slave traders stormed her home, setting fire to houses, capturing villagers, and dragging them away in chains. Among the terrified captives was the young girl who would one day become known to history as Hurrem Sultan. The captives were marched for days, possibly weeks, to the Black Sea port of Kaffa, where they were sold in the bustling slave markets. There the traders noticed her fiery red hair and striking features, realizing she would fetch a far higher price if sold in Constantinople, the beating heart of the Ottoman Empire. And so she was shipped to the capital, where she entered a world few outsiders ever saw, the imperial palace. She began her new life as a servant in the household of the Sultan's granddaughter. Here, she was renamed Hürrem, a Persian word meaning the cheerful one. The name reflected her lively spirit, which even captivity could not crush. Around the age of 15, she caught the attention of Hurrem Sultan, mother of the new ruler, Suleiman the Magnificent. Hafsa selected her as a gift for her son, and in doing so, unknowingly set in motion one of history's most extraordinary stories of ambition, love, and intrigue. The palace harem, or forbidden place, was at once a sanctuary of beauty and a prison of golden bars. It housed not just the Sultan's concubines, but also his mother, sisters, aunts, daughters, and young sons. The women there lived in opulence unimaginable to commoners. Marble fountains, golden tiles, silken rugs, musicians and poets to entertain them, and sumptuous banquets every day. They were educated in music, poetry, literature, dance, and embroidery, preparing them for the possibility of catching the Sultan's eye. But behind this luxury lurked fear. The women were watched over by eunuchs, African men who had been castrated to ensure the Sultan's bloodline remained pure. The harem's hierarchy was rigid, and every woman lived in constant competition with the others. The Sultan's mother ruled over the harem, choosing which women were deemed worthy of her son's attention. Hürrem's beauty and vivacious charm soon made her stand out among the hundreds of concubines. Her bright red hair, rare in the empire, and her quick wit made her impossible to ignore. When Suleiman noticed her, she was summoned to his chambers and expected to be just another fleeting indulgence. But from their very first night together, she intrigued him in ways no one else had. She was not only beautiful, but also intelligent, witty, and full of life. She could recite poetry, laugh easily, and speak her mind, qualities that kept Suleiman captivated even after his initial desire was sated. Before long, she became his favourite, called to his chambers again and again. Her growing influence, however, drew the ire of Mahidevran, the Sultan's former favourite and mother of his eldest son, Mustafa. Enraged at being displaced, Mahidevran attacked Hürrem, calling her soiled meat and scratching her face. But Hürrem turned this humiliation into opportunity. The next time Suleiman summoned her, she came to him bruised and bleeding, and calmly told her side of the story. She secured his sympathy, while Mahidevran fell further from favor. Hürrem's first major triumph came when she bore the Sultan a son, Mehmed. Ottoman tradition dictated that a mother could bear only one son, after which the Sultan would move on to other concubines. But Suleiman continued to call for Hürrem, breaking precedent again and again. She went on to have 5 more children, sons Selim, Bayezid, Cihangir, and a daughter, Mirima. Even after her youngest son, Cihangir, was born with a spinal deformity, Hürrem's hold on Suleiman never weakened. However, the empire's elite whispered that she had bewitched him, using magic to keep his affections. To test him, rivals brought other red-haired women into the harem, but Suleiman rejected them all. The Sultan even composed poetry for her, writing, "Crown of my solitude, my moonlight, my joy, my confidant, my one and only love, my mischievous queen, my beloved, I will praise you always." As the years passed, Hürrem's position in the palace grew ever stronger. She had given the Sultan multiple sons, yet he showed no desire to turn her affections elsewhere. In a harem where women were used to being replaced after bearing a single heir, Hürrem remained an unshakable presence at his side. Her dominance did not go unnoticed, either within the harem or beyond its walls. The Ottoman elite whispered about her influence, with some claiming she had bewitched the Sultan. The more conservative scholars accused her of tempting him into sin by making him neglect the traditions of his forefathers. Foreign diplomats recorded their astonishment that the Sultan, ruler of a vast empire, was so enthralled by a former slave. Then came the shock that sent ripples through the entire empire. Suleiman married her. It was an unprecedented act. No Ottoman Sultan before him had ever married a concubine. For centuries, the sultans had fathered children exclusively through their harems to avoid alliances that might tie the dynasty to any single family or power. But Suleiman defied this tradition by making Hürrem his lawful wife in a grand wedding ceremony. He conferred upon her the title of Haseki Sultan, elevating her to a rank never before seen in the Ottoman court. She moved out of the harem and into private apartments next to the Sultan himself, breaking yet another long-standing rule forbidding women from residing in the political center of the palace. The court was scandalized. Conservative clerics denounced the marriage as an affront to centuries of custom, and rival factions grumbled that a foreign-born slave now ruled the Sultan's heart. But Suleiman did not care. Hürrem's power was now unassailable. As Haseki Sultan, she stepped out of the shadows of the harem and into the wider sphere of imperial politics. She built her own networks of power, cultivated alliances, and even corresponded directly with foreign rulers. Most notably, she maintained a warm relationship with King Sigismund II of Poland, the ruler of her homeland, ensuring peace and stability on the empire's northern borders. At home, she sought to soften her controversial image by engaging in acts of public charity. She commissioned mosques, schools, fountains, soup kitchens, and hospitals. In Jerusalem, she funded the construction of a vast public kitchen to feed the poor and provide for pilgrims. In Istanbul, she built a women's hospital near the slave market, perhaps remembering the pain of her own arrival in chains. Through her example, other Ottoman women began to wield more influence than ever before. Hürrem's rise marked the dawn of the so-called Sultanate of Women, a century during which the mothers and wives of sultans would play crucial roles in the running of the empire. But for all her accomplishments, she could not afford to let her guard down. The greatest threat to her children came in the form of Shehzadeh Mustafa, the Sultan's eldest son and the child of Mahidevran. Handsome, brave, and deeply popular with the army, Mustafa was seen by many as the obvious heir to the throne. His charisma and military prowess won him the hearts of the Janissaries, the empire's elite soldiers, and Hürrem knew this made him dangerous. Ottoman succession was a brutal affair. There was no fixed line of inheritance. When a sultan died, all his sons had equal claim to the throne. They would race to secure the capital, gather allies, and eliminate each other. For the victor, there was glory. For the rest, only death, often by strangulation with a bowstring, to avoid shedding royal blood. Hürrem feared what Mustafa's inevitable ascension would mean for her own sons. She knew he would never spare them, and so she resolved to strike first. Her opportunity came in the form of Rustem Pasha, Suleiman's new Grand Vizier. She married her daughter Mihrima to him, forging a powerful alliance. Together, they began to poison the Sultan's mind against Mustafa, feeding him rumors of treason and rebellion. Mustafa, hearing whispers of his father's doubts, rushed to the Sultan's camp in Persia to clear his name. But it was too late. As he entered his father's tent, he was seized by guards and strangled before he could even speak. Suleiman, watching coldly, did nothing to stop them. The death of the beloved prince sent shockwaves through the empire. Soldiers wept, the people mourned, and many blamed Hürrem for orchestrating his downfall. But her troubles were far from over. Not long after Mustafa's execution, her youngest son, Cihangir, who had always been fragile in health, died, overcome, some said, by grief at his half-brother's death. Now only two of her sons remained, Selim and Bayezid. Both eyed the throne, and both knew only one could survive to claim it. Perhaps it was a mercy that Hürrem did not live to witness the final struggle between her sons. By her early 50s, her health began to fail. Long years of stress, intrigue, and grief had worn her down. As she lay dying, Suleiman kept vigil at her bedside. The same man who had once conquered empires, now powerless to save the woman he loved. On April 15th, 1558, Hurrem Sultan took her final breath. She was buried in a grand mausoleum beside the Suleymaniye Mosque, forever close to her beloved Suleiman. But even in death, the bloodshed did not stop. Bayezid eventually rebelled against his father and was executed, leaving Selim as the sole heir. Hürrem had succeeded in securing the throne for one of her sons. But at what cost? Her ambition had reshaped the empire, ushering in a century when Ottoman women would wield more influence than ever before. Like Elizabeth I, Catherine de' Medici, and Mary, Queen of Scots, her European contemporaries, Hürrem was vilified in her time for daring to reach for power. But today, she is remembered as a woman of brilliance, courage, and unshakable devotion to her children. Hürrem Sultan's death left a void not just in Suleiman's heart, but also in the very fabric of the Ottoman court. The empire that she had helped shape would never be the same. For the remaining 8 years of his life, the Sultan was a changed man. He who once dined off golden platters and wore silks now chose plain linen robes. He gave away his jewels, ate from earthen bowls, and withdrew into a melancholy solitude. He ruled, but his spirit was dimmed. Those who served him whispered that he had left his joy in the tomb of Hürrem Sultan. When he finally died in 1566, Suleiman was laid to rest in the Suleymaniye Mosque, beside the woman who had captivated him, consoled him, and shaped his reign. Together they remain to this day, two lovers entwined in death as they were in life.